Hey guys, this is just a bit of a video download on the recent Morocco trip, just to show you some footage and give a bit of a download on where we went and how we did it. That might be useful for you if you're planning on your own Morocco adventure. I'll be running it again next year, so you're obviously welcome to come with me. But obviously, equally, if you want to do it your own way, it's not overly difficult. So I'll just talk you through it. Back in March, I did a bit of a recce run using rental bikes out of Marrakesh through a company called Ride to Atlas, which I have to say were very good. The price of the bikes was about €50 a day for the Himalayans. And you can go up to 100 and whatever euros for GSs and Harley Davidsons. But there really is a great option of bikes out of Marrakesh to rent through various companies. And I think the benefit of the fly ride is that you can do a bit of Morocco in a week. You just fly into Marrakesh, very easy to navigate the city, go and pick a bike up, and then head out into the what is probably the best ride in Morocco anyway, down in that southern region, out to the Atlas Mountains, out to Mazugu if you want to, to see the sand dunes and things. So in March we had a real good experience of doing a fly ride, and it was a great easy digestible way of experiencing a bit of Morocco without a lot of time and money invested in it, which is sometimes what people want. So that was one option. And then for this trip, the idea was to take our own bikes, but like a lot of people, I have family commitments and things, so organising a trip over 2 weeks is sometimes difficult. And the reality of taking your own bike to Morocco is that you've got a long stint to get down through Spain. You've got to take the ferry from Plymouth Santander. That's about £600-700 return, and then the transit days, 2 or 3 days each way down through Spain. Obviously adds up both fuel, accommodation, and tyre wear. Also pushes you onto a bigger bike, and so for me, it wasn't an appealing option. And so I used moving motorcycles, which were a Northampton-based company. I've used them a few times this year for this trip and also for the Balkans trip, but it's run by a chap called Giles, who I've used over the last 12 years. I air freighted my Honda CT110 to New York to do the coast to coast on that back in 2012, and then myself and my wife air freighted GS1200 into Las Vegas back in 2015. So I know Giles a long time. It's a well established company, and to put my trust in anyone, that was where I went. And the bikes get dropped off in Northampton a week before transit, and they get put in stillages. Then they go onto a haulage lorry, get driven down, and we met them at Malaga. We flew into Malaga on a Saturday, picked the bikes up Saturday morning from the depot, and then the trip sort of began. And it meant that we got out of a 2 week period, we've got 12 days in Morocco, which is kind of what I was after. Rather than jumping straight down to the ferry, I took a meandering route out through Ronda. That was mainly just to give people a bit of time to settle in and adjust to being on the wrong side of the road, or get to know each other a little bit. So it meant that we picked the bikes up morning Saturday, and then we just spent the day riding around down through rural Spain. Some fantastic riding roads, up through Ronda and the Ronda Valley. And then we went down towards the ferry port at Algeciras, and at the bottom of Spain, just near Gibraltar. We stayed in some apartments there, then got up the next morning to catch the ferry to Morocco. What I would say is give yourself plenty of time to take the ferry to Morocco. There is, with going anywhere on a ferry, there's a bit of checking in time, and then at the end getting out time. And it probably took us a good couple of hours, mainly because there was quite a few of us, to get the insurance documents and whatnot on the Moroccan side. It is a very easy process. I used a ticket booking company on the Spanish side to get all the tickets, and then otherwise you just turn up like a typical ferry. You board the ferry, and then on board the ferry there is like a police depot office on the ferry, and that's where you get stamped into Morocco. So your passport is ready to go by the time you step off Morocco. There isn't sort of customs, or there isn't a passport office on land. It all takes place on the boat, which is very easy to find and easy to do. They'll talk you through it. Good speaking English staff we found on board, and that was no problem at all. When you land, it can be a bit bewildering. You just have to find signs for exit and customs, and we went Algeciras into Tangier Med, which is the big sort of international port that a lot of people use these days. And For obvious reasons, it's very slick and easy. It's all very newly built, newly developed. It's no different to Calais or Dover in that regard, in how it appears. You go through, you come up to customs, and that's where you get a little slip of paper that's assigned to your bike, and you don't need to. You have to keep hold of that little white slip of paper because that's what you need to give evidence of when you leave with the bike. So don't lose that. And then you just straight through to where the insurance office is, and there's a cafe there, and other bits and bobs, and the ticket office for the ferries, etc. And your insurance, we paid €90 for a 30-day insurance policy, which only covers your third party. Just a claim if you hit someone. But the problem with Morocco, certainly for UK riders, it's not so bad if you're on the continent. Our insurance policies typically don't issue green cards for Morocco, so you have to get the insurance at the border, which is third party only, which is why, for me, taking a cheaper bike works well, because if something happens, you get stolen, written off, or whatever, it's not too painful, which is why the BMW G650GS was, for this trip, an absolute ideal bike, £2,200. Nice bit of power, 47 brake horsepower, whatever it is. Nice and manageable and light, easy to do the dirt roads on, and good on the road. I thought it was an absolutely splendid Moroccan travel bike, to be honest. So I'll do a separate video on that. But we had a bit of everything: Himalayan, CRS, Vogue 300, couple of KTM 690s, Ducati Desert X, KTM 890. So some smaller bikes and some bigger bikes, Sero 225. Typically with any tour like this, I provide the framework. On this occasion, I provided a medic and a support van, a local support van with tyre fixing facilities on board and tools and things. And I provide the route and the accommodation and the mapping, but I tend to insist everyone sort of self-navigates and form smaller groups. No solo riding unless really necessary. But to get people down into smaller groups and to figure out who they like riding with, to me, is the best way of running this type of trip, because it's an adventure. People need to find their own feet, find their own pace, find their own place for lunch, because that's all part of building the confidence of being a motorcycle traveller. So I like to always think my trips are a good preparation for people going off on their own and doing their own thing, rather than just being beholden to the tour operators such as myself. So I don't do a fully guided experience anymore. I used to try to, but it just ended up in chaos trying to get lots of different people to go at similar paces and stop at the same time when everyone's got different opinions on when they should have lunch or how fast they should ride. So that's how I do it. From the port, we arrived and we had a 2-hour ride to Chefchaouen, which is a blue city in the north. I've got to say, the north doesn't have the appeal of the south. It's quite dirty, a lot of plastic waste, more traffic. Just not as appealing as a place to travel through as the south, which we can't fault them for that, because that's where the industry is and the commerce. So the north is by its nature not as appealing as the south, which is more rural, or the east. So on this route, we stayed in Chefchaouen, stayed in the Blue House Town, it was called, up on the hills overlooking Chefchaouen. Nice spot, nice way for people to gently ease their way into a foreign country. And I think that's a large part of it. If you drop people in at the deep end, sometimes people can panic. I heard of one chap who got off the ferry in Morocco, panicked at the chaos, and got straight back on the next ferry and went home. And so I tried to avoid that just by having a manageable first few days, just to get people to settle in. So we could see the bright lights of the city, but we weren't in it, So we sat and had the tagine, the first tagine of the trip, and we got to know each other, and then the adventure began. And I took people more to the east, southeast, so to get away from Fez. I kind of wanted to avoid the cities. Cities in any country are hard work, especially with multiple people to make sure they get in and out okay. So we went, dropped down southeast to Tazaka National Park, nice hotel there. That was great, actually. It became more rural as we started to ride in that direction. Some great riding, certainly as we entered the park, getting there at dusk. Just some beautiful turns, nice and quiet. It was a really memorable riding evening. That nice hotel, not expensive. Found it on Booking.com. That's where I find a lot of bookings from, or make a lot of bookings. Obviously, more local knowledge means you might find more small hotels, but with a big group, you need a big hotel. So It's a bit chicken and the egg. I find that dealing direct with hotels can sometimes be awkward, sometimes can be good. Typically, if you WhatsApp the hotels over there, they are very good at getting back to you. Sometimes, if you make a booking through Booking.com, they'll make direct contact asking you to cancel that booking and book direct. Sometimes that saves you money. Sometimes it's more hassle than it's worth. They want you to make transfers and things like that, which is it's easy to let Booking.com deal with it. A lot of hotels only want cash. Cash is king in Morocco. It's a closed currency, so you have to take euros in and change it once you're inside the country, or get it out the cash machines at a pretty terrible rate. But they've got you by the short and curlies, and there's not a lot you can do. It's typically 100 dirham to I'm going to get this mixed up. 10 dirham to a euro. I think that's right. A week's passed and already my memory's faded. But from Tazika, we had a splendid day actually. Went down to Midelt, and this took us really a lot of rural roads, not off piste, but some rough road riding. Not too challenging, but sort of adventure. Felt a sense of adventure. Some really lovely twisty roads up through the mountains, and then through some forests, and it really gave everyone a chance just to relax. Not a lot of traffic, find the pace. I mean, people were 2 or 3 hours apart by the time they arrived at the hotel. That's how much spread apart. I end up with groups because some like to take photos, some like to have a long lunch. We had a long stretch without fuel, which was a bit nerve-wracking. I'd say if you've got a 200-mile range in Morocco, that'd be best. 150 you can manage, but you might want to take a bladder. 100 miles, forget it. I'd want more than that. Although people do travel on 100-mile ranges, but for me, you'd want a bit more. But yeah, in Medel, we just stayed on the outskirts in this riad, this quite recently constructed traditional looking riad, which was a nice, pleasant spot. They've all got swimming pools, but this time of year it was all too cold. Food's always good on site, typically €10 per person they'll charge you for dinner per night. For the night, breakfast is generally included. Food is pretty much always a tagine, which is like a dry stew pot, and breakfast is bread, jams, and things like that. So, food-wise, you're all right. I definitely recommend not travelling during Ramadan. We did the fly ride in March during Ramadan, and it was perfectly rideable, everything, but everywhere was closed. You couldn't get lunch. You couldn't get much in the way of coffee houses or things like that. You couldn't find much to break up the day, and I think it robbed the trip of a certain sense of, interaction, engagement with local people and local way of life, which is a large part of motorcycle travel to me. It's not about the motorcycle per se. It's about where the motorcycle takes you and who it allows you to engage with. And if everything's closed, then there's not much engagement going on there. So yeah, I would definitely avoid Ramadan. It changes, it moves around slightly each year. Just check the dates and go outside of that is my advice. And then as we came down, we stayed in the Medel, and then we went to Agudal, which is at the top of the gorge, which I always forget the name of. I always forget the name of all the gorges. But this day was a fantastic day. It was probably a highlight for me, and it's an area we rode in March, and it just takes you through the gorges, up the very busy ones where you see the tourists getting off the tourist coaches, which I think is fascinating to see. The way without a motorcycle or the independence of travel, you just have to go with the herd and get on and off the tourist coach with the herd and miss so much in between. You really are seeing blinks of the landscape when you're given the right to get on and off, and you're completely without any control. And so the motorcycle for me, it's just a fantastic way to travel for the way it allowed you to immerse and experience the country and the landscape up close without having to pedal. A cycle's probably even closer to that nature, that reality. But it's a lot of hard work. Whereas a motorcycle, we really are blessed to be able to use a motorcycle as a mode of transport, because I don't think there's anything else to rival it. But this day, certainly absolutely splendid. We stopped in a village where we found a Dutch woman who ran a little cafe there. That was fantastic. I put the details up on the video. And then we stayed in Agdal, which is kind of it's a poor mountaintop type of town, a bit ramshackle, a bit raw. The kids are quite on you as soon as you pull up, but you've got to deal with that hassle sometimes out there. You'll hear stories of kids throwing stones at people. We didn't have it on this one, but kids giving you the bird, flipping you the bird in the finger. I get it. We're wealthy Western tourists passing through their country, offering nothing much of gain other than amusement. Or trinkets that some people land there, and I can see why there's. It seemed to me in Morocco there is an increasing divide, although I do read that it's always been the case of of the tourist and the local. The locals are heavily policed. There's checkpoints at not every town and village, but a lot that never stop the tourists. The tourists are free to go. We sort of waft in with our wealth, waft out again, and we don't leave much behind in the way of prosperity other than to those who benefit directly from it, the hotel owners perhaps, and the restaurateurs and stuff. But the kids, the bereft kids, the the poor kids in the villages don't seem to benefit much at all. So which is yeah, it's a shame, and with Morocco as booming as it is as a tourist destination, it's probably the divide is probably only going to get wider. But it is what it is, and as a tourist, you can't do too much to help really. But on that day we went so Agadal, and then we dropped back down through the other gorge. I'll put the names up because I just cannot remember names of gorges for whatever reason. This was a splendid day. It was, and it's reality of following routes and looking at route maps and things like that. Morocco is being quickly tarmacked, so what was once or what is listed as dirt road is now tarmac. But on this day, it didn't matter too much because the view and the riding was absolutely splendid. Like a volcanic landscape, we entered. Lots of great tarmac stretches down there, twists and turns, really smooth turns, and then we did a bit of dirt to finish the day and ended up at a camp. Again, I'll put the name of some really nice camps that are out in the deserts or on the outskirts of town, which give you the taste of the desert without having to trek on camels to get into it to camp. And that was a really good spot to camp. And then we just worked our way, west. 8 Ben Hadou we stayed at, which is where the old sort of citadel, which is the backdrop to Gladiator 2 and a lot of other sword and sandal types events. Again, some great tarmac to ride. You can't really fault the road building out there. It's wherever they're getting the money, wherever they're getting the talent and the skill and the labour to build these roads, fair play to them because they are really laying down some incredible tarmac. It puts England to shame, to be honest. And from 8 Ben Hadou, where we had a Chinese of all things to break up the routine of the tagine. We dropped south on a road that again looked like it was tarmac but turned to be dirt, and it was one of the most spectacular rides we'd had just through the wilderness of Morocco, which you think is a wilderness, and then you'll meet a shepherd on a moped who's doing the same road, and you're all dressed up for adventure with your adventure bike, your adventure helmet, and there's a man in flip-flops on a Chinese scooter doing exactly the same thing, doing it every day because it's just his commute, and you're making it into a spectacle. Such is a contrast of life. It was a fantastic day. That really enjoyed that riding day with a small group of people. The others had taken the tarmac road, and we enjoyed the landscape. Just going to pause it there. I need to plug my laptop in. So it was a fantastic day. That really enjoyed that day. A really memorable riding day, which they all are. And I think this is the thing in everyday life. Days fly by without a blink or any change or any great excitement. But on a trip like that, it's like you're squeezing so many senses and sights and experiences down into a relatively small period of time, and it's almost like overload. You're seeing and doing that much stuff that it kind of blurs into one, but at the same time, it becomes a great blizzard of excitement and energy and memories. So I think that's what I love about travel. Certainly, when you travel with a purpose to do a loop or get somewhere, you squeeze so much into a short space of time, which makes it feel when you get home that nothing much happens from day to day. So I guess that's what I get a lot out of travel from. It feels like I've achieved something, if you know what I mean. We stayed in some tents just outside of Tata. We had a bonfire, and Jono slept in a hammock, and we had another tagine, and it was all just a splendid evening out in the desert. And then we pushed west to Tafrout, which is a lovely little town in the south. It's quite a bustling feel to it because there's a lot of rural landscape around. So this seems to be the epicenter of life for the area. Lots of rock climbing around there, some great roads, some great riding. We had 2 nights here and headed on the sort of a day off to go and see Amtoudi, which is a small little Berber town right in the crack of a big ravine gorge, and at the top, an hour's walk up this steep climb is like a fortified grain silo from 800 years ago or something like that, and it's recently been restored. So that was kind of the destination for the trip, really. Although it was only me and John who walked to the summit, but it was well worth it just to see and to experience these two old blokes who lived up there, or certainly were up there at the time. They showed us around these old granaries and where they kept spices and mustards and things like that. And we looked down on the valley, and it was a fantastic, fabulous place. And again, it's like, off the beaten track. They'd had some earthquakes in that region, so the local campsite and hotel were closed. So we didn't see a lot of tourists. And that's the cheek and jowl of it. Again, we're passing through, but in recent years, there'd been earthquakes which had killed quite a few Moroccans. And as we moved on towards Marrakesh, through the Tizian Test Pass, we stayed in a place there which was right nearby, where people were still living in sort of temporary refuge shelters from an earthquake 2 years ago, which killed quite a number of people. So, it's a different. It's just you're seeing things that you're seeing things from the luxury of your um, um, predicament in life, if you know what I mean. But yeah, Tafrit was great. We had a great day on the bike. Went to see the Window of Life, which is just a hole in the rock with a nice road running down a gorge to get to it. That was quite a spectacular sight. And then, we worked our way up towards Marrakesh, taking in the Tizian Test Pass, which I have to say is a great experience for the fact that it seems to be being built in an eternal battle against nature that increasingly tries to reclaim it. So as much as they rebuild, as much as nature reclaims with landslides and other things. So very exciting. Lots of road building being done as we went up and down it. But it's a spectacular thing, and it takes you right down into Marrakesh. We stayed just on the outskirts of Marrakesh at this really nice sort of retreat, sort of I don't know, swimming pool villas, a bit like Center Parks, a nice dinner. Yeah, it's a really nice sort of treat for us all, actually. And there's lots of variety of accommodation in Morocco to suit all budgets and tastes. So, I think Morocco, compared to say like India, where sometimes India can be a bit threadbare in places, Morocco generally accommodation standards are very good and not too expensive. I think this one was about 80 quid for the night for a twin share, which was high compared to what we've been paying, but it was a delightful place to stay. We moved on to Chem's Hotel in Marrakesh the next day, and that gave us a chance to explore the Medina and the market and just lay low in Marrakesh to see city life. Riding in and out the cities in Morocco, I don't think is as bad as people say. If you've ridden in India, Morocco's a breeze. It's like rural. It's rural farmland compared to India in terms of traffic volume, density, and ferocity. There can be some people sit on your bumper and overtake too close. Just be mindful of them. But they seem to exist in an hour radius of Marrakesh, and once you're outside of that, everything's fine again. And then, unfortunately, we had to make our way back north. Due to time, we just had to sort of get going and work our way the most direct route, which isn't the most scenic. So again, the beauty of the fly ride is that you can jump straight into Marrakesh, go and see all this lovely southern area without having to deal with any of that hustle and bustle of the more busy roads to the north and the less interesting landscape. So that's a real big plus point for the fly ride. But I have to say, when we got to the port and we got back across, we dropped our bikes back off at Malaga at the shipping company, and we're now waiting for them to return. I think there is an excitement in that. There is an invested return in what you put into the trip, and in exchange what you get out of it. We're going to get bikes back that are still caked in Moroccan dust and dirt, and they've got stickers on them, and they've got memories. And I do think that is a large part of the appeal. It's a bit like me, I've still got the CT110 that I rode from Sydney to Alaska on. I've still got that. I'll never sell it. I'll keep it because it's a memory. It's a physical memory of a time that might become a distant memory, if that makes sense. I've always got something tangible. And I think it's a bit like that with taking and bringing back a motorbike. It adds some deep sort of reward to the experience, which is why I did prefer taking my own bike. It was more hassle in a way, more time taken, and probably more expensive. It is more expensive taking your own, I've got to be honest, but there is more reward in it. But there's pros and cons to both. So it's up to you how much time you've got, how convenient you want the trip to be. But it's certainly very convenient to fly riding to Marrakesh, which again we're doing in March for 8 days, and I think that's a great period of time to see a lot of Morocco. So that's it. So we had some great riding. I had a great group, really nice people. I think they really enjoyed it. Just that sense of stepping out and living. and being somewhere different and challenging themselves and just seeing a different way of life. Very easy to get into the routine, isn't it, of day-to-day life? And it's I think Morocco, just as many other places, can give you a real jolt to see that things are different for different people in different parts of the world. So it's very accessible, Morocco. Arguably getting too touristy, but we can't complain about that, can we? And then go there as well. So it's just the nature of it being such a pleasant, accessible place with great roads, great scenery, great food, great option of hotels, and not overly expensive. So it's a victim of its own fortune, I guess, in a way, and hopefully the trickle down effect to the community as a whole, society as a whole, is quite quick. Happens quite quickly. We did notice there's a lot of school children dressed for school, going to school, studying, reading. There is an educated youth coming forward, who are probably going to change things. Shake things up a bit, which is no bad thing, and bring the country forward, and probably hopefully make it more prosperous. But we enjoyed it for today. It was an enjoyable trip for today. That's it. Any questions on Morocco, or if you've got any suggestions, then just chip in, throw some suggestions in. What did you experience? What did you like? What did you dislike? Yeah, that sort of thing. Let's make it a conversation. All right, guys. Happy travelling. Cheers, bye.